Welcome to episode 2 of Revolutionizing Manufacturing, brought to you by Smart Industry. I'm your co-host, Scott Achelpohl, managing editor at Smart Industry, and I'm joined once again by our Industry 4.0 enthusiast and influencer, Jeff Winter. In the spirit of summer blockbusters and it being July, this episode is the great sequel to our June premiere, like The Empire Strikes Back or The Godfather Part 2, but hopefully not Jaws 2. After last month's premiere episode, me and Jeff got to thinking about the foundations of a company's digital transformation. And we concluded a lot of it has to start with data. Whether a manufacturer has a handle on all the data that feeds every single one of its processes, hour in, hour out, day in, day out, shift after shift of production runtime.
That's right. We talked a lot about quite a few different topics for future episodes, and we concluded that at the end of the day, it's all about the data. You know, all the cool new technologies and transformational initiatives you hear out there all revolve around properly capturing and extracting value from data. It's the secret sauce that helps manufacturers predict problems before they happen and streamline processes and make smarter decisions faster. It's not just about keeping up with the competition. It's about staying ahead with setting new standards. And without data, you're missing out on all the efficiencies and innovations that make modern manufacturing so exciting.
You know, Jeff, I got to thinking about the movie Apollo 13. Yes, the Tom Hanks blockbuster, he of Houston, we have a problem. Great movie, right? If you recall from that film and the real mission in 1970, the Apollo astronauts are stranded, headed on a perilous slingshot course around the moon. And the team on the ground at NASA has to figure out how the three crew can conserve power and generate more for the crippled Odyssey command module to keep the heroes alive for several long days in space before splashdown. There's a line from that movie that stands out, and that line is "Power is everything." Well, in our case, think about it. We can draw the analogy with data. Data is everything. Lots of manufacturing companies have told us they couldn't build a solid foundation for any project related to digital transformation without getting a handle on their unbounded and oftentimes disorganized and disjointed data. Before embarking on, say, setting up predictive maintenance in a plant, they often need to figure out data, where it's stored, how it's organized, where it comes from, how it's utilized, and how they want to organize and use it in their goal to use center sensors, say, and PM to avoid downtime and keep the line running. In this way, data could be thought of as a foundational concept in the era of Industry 4.0, like what we talked about in episode 1 last month, Jeff. So that's the direction we'll take today with the sequel, episode 2, our summer blockbuster. Plus, we have more questions from you, our listeners, that we want to take time to answer. By the way, we'll do this during every episode to make what me and Jeff talk about here on our program as interactive as possible with our audience. Anyways, what say you, Jeff? This isn't Rotten Tomatoes, but what's your favorite movie?
Well, it's a simple question, but a tough answer, mainly because it depends on my mood and it's changed over time. So I'm going to pick one that's more relevant today, at least sort of. Terminator 2, because that was, for many years, my favorite movie. And because the recent rise in artificial intelligence, I feel like Skynet, the self-aware artificial intelligence system that turns against humanity, triggering a global apocalypse, that it's at an all-time high right now in terms of references. I mean, after all, the possibility of coming true is now more possible than it was in 1991, 33 years ago. And check out my LinkedIn profile if you don't believe me.
I love that movie. Great sequel to the original, right? I'll be back. Jeff, you're the stats and trends guy. Tell us about some of the most interesting stats you have found as they relate to our subject today, which is data.
Absolutely. And I love these stats. And some of them took me a while to find. I always like to start off by painting the picture of how much data is created. So consider this. According to IoT Analytics, we're surrounded by a staggering 16.7 billion connected IoT devices. And that doesn't even include laptops and cell phones. And it's these devices that are creating an unprecedented revolution in data generation. Let's put this in perspective. Eric Schmidt, the former CEO of Google, famously said in 2010 that the amount of data generated since the dawn of civilization all the way up until 2003 was estimated to be around 5 exabytes. Sounds impressive, right? Even if you don't know what an exabyte is. But fast forward to 2024, and according to Statista, we're staring at a mind-blowing 147 zettabytes of data that's anticipated to be generated this year alone. To grasp that magnitude, that means that we're going to be roughly creating 29,500 times the amount of data this year alone as we did in all of humanity up until 2003. That's crazy. But you might be wondering, yeah, but who's producing and who's collecting all this data? It's not the banks, it's not healthcare, and it isn't retail. It's manufacturing. According to McKinsey Global Institute, manufacturing is collecting nearly double the data volume as the next highest industry. Yet here's where reality sinks in. Out of the roughly 2,000 petabytes of data collected, by the industry each year, the Industrial IoT Consortium estimates that we let 99% of it slip through our fingers, discarded like yesterday's newspaper. And Cybersecurity Ventures predicts that the total amount of data stored in the cloud, which includes public clouds operated by vendors and social media companies, government-owned clouds that are accessible to citizens and businesses, private clouds, and just cloud storage providers, that it's going to reach 100 zettabytes by 2025, or 50% of the world's data at that time. And that's up from 25% stored in the cloud in 2015. And according to another organization, Cloud Scene, there are roughly 5,380-ish data centers in the United States, at least at the time they did this year, and that there are that many that store most of this data. And all of this new data generated, are you aware that only a little bit of it is actually stored? According to Boston Consulting Group, in a study they did last year, the percentage of stored data will just nudge up from 6% in 2021 to 7% by this year. And on top of that, more than 50% of the data that is stored by companies is what's called dark data, meaning the data isn't used in any manner to derive insights for decision making. So how about them for stats?
Dark data, talk about a Terminator 2 reference there. Anyway, predictive maintenance is one example of a digital transformation project that might hinge on good quality data, coming from sensors mostly. Other much larger ones like automation, AI, and better visibility into factory OT also would be candidates for creating so-called clean data and keeping it that way. At SI, we've touched on this in earlier programs. Here's a shameless plug for you. Like an episode in March of our Great Question on Manufacturing podcasts. Our guests for that episode, Craig Resnick and Marcel Van Helten, coincidentally drew an Apollo 13-like comparison, that data is power. During that podcast, Craig said, word for word, data is what makes the world go round. So, Jeff, I want to draw on your expertise here with this. What are some other examples in digital transformation where intact data is absolutely critical for success?
I laugh because the answer is simple. The answer is all of them. There is no shortage of digital transformation use cases out there, but they all revolve around one key element, being digital. And that means using data. And if you look at, for example, IoT Analytics in their 2022 Industry 4.0 adoption report, they track the top 15 smart manufacturing use cases and the top 16 smart product use cases. And all 31 revolve around collecting, transferring, or using data. So what's the most important? Well, the answer is obvious. Good data. It's important because it helps us make informed decisions, identify trends, and solve problems effectively. And without good data, you're just guessing. And you're not even just guessing, but you're making informed bad decisions if you have bad data. Now, most companies out there will tell you that there are 7 main characteristics of data quality. There's completeness, which really measures how much of the data is present and usable. There's uniqueness, which ensures that there's no duplicate data. There's validity, which checks if data matches the required format and business rules that you have. There's timeliness, which ensures data is available within the expected time frame. There's accuracy, which confirms data correctness based on just kind of a designated source of truth. There's consistency, which compares data across different data sets to ensure similar trends and reliable relationships. And the last one's usually auditability, which is, data is accessible and changes are traceable. But one thing you have to realize is if you don't have those, bad data cost us dearly. According to Gartner research, the average financial impact of poor data quality on an organization is $12.9 million per year. And that was back in 2021. IBM also discovered that in the US alone, businesses lose $3.1 trillion annually due to poor data quality. So yeah, it matters.
Indeed, it does. Jeff, our audience is, as you know, continually invited to give us questions to answer here, as we will do every month. By the way, they can be posted to our social channels or sent to Jeff and Scott at spartanindustry.com. We've had a few more for this month, so let's go about answering them. For that, I'm going to ask Jeff for a big assist with the answers. So here's the first question from Stephanie Taj Bahai, who asks, what are some unconventional data sources that manufacturers can tap into for better decision making?
Unconventional sources. That's tough because what's unconventional to one might be normal to another. But let's start by breaking out the types of data. And there are a couple different ways to think about this. I was actually part of an article that got released last year with Mesa called Manufacturing Data Capture and Exchange. And in that, the group of us that helped write it, we came up with 9 types of data that are typically found in manufacturing environments. You have your production data, you have your process data, you have your product data, your equipment data, your quality data, your financial data, your facility and environmental data, supplier data, and audit and compliance data. But we also talked about how there are 3 different main levels of structure in how we store the data that the manufacturing systems creator used. You have your structured data, your semi-structured data, and your unstructured data. And then on top of that, the data can be described by its frequency, whether it's discrete, continuous, or batch, or its relationship to time, whether it's transactional or real-time data. So unique data will be hard to answer in terms of finding that. The only study that I'm aware of is one that's done by LXT, but it was specifically focusing on AI. And in it, LXT evaluated 13 different data types and said which was most used today and what will be used most in the future, at least for the purpose of AI. And they did across all industries. And since computer vision was the most deployed AI solution across all industries, it may not come as a surprise that images came back as the top data type used in manufacturing at 39%, with time series second at 37%, and then sensor data coming in at 36%. Now, future manufacturers picked product or SKU information first and time series second. But the one I found most interesting in there, at least in terms of the data types, is because of other industries too, is they had handwriting, they had voice, they had gesture, and they even had user behavior data, all of which I would find pretty unique to manufacturing. And so you're aware, user data was dead last in manufacturing, but actually first in healthcare. So I'm sure that there's something we can use, from that industry. So it depends on, once again, how you look at it. Now, predictive maintenance is another application where AI is used and quite popular, where data can be pulled from many different sources. And I've seen several companies there that are using acoustic data to help predict future issues. And I personally find that one unique. But there's also a paper I read called the the opportunities for eye tracking technology in manufacturing and logistics. And it came out in a 2022 the Journal for Computers and Industrial Engineering. And I believe that tracked something like 71 different papers on eye tracking applications and talked about how the technology and data could be used for everything from tracking workers' task analysis and assistance to scrutinizing task consistency within or between workers, and even to evaluate workers' physical and mental states or help with improving processes. So I found that one to be unique, but I would say pretty rare right now.
Interesting. Great detailed answer, Jeff. Okay, another one. Mitchell Graham asks, how might small and mid-sized manufacturers adopt data monitoring analytics tools without significant financial investment, a big one, cost? Are there any supporting software companies that you see do this the best?
So small to mid-sized manufacturers can get into data monitoring and analytics without breaking the bank by using typically cloud-based solutions, starting with small pilot projects and tapping into open source tools. So cloud platforms offer flexible and affordable data analytics services, so you don't need to invest heavily in infrastructure. And running pilot projects can help you test and prove the value of analytic tools before diving in deeper. Plus, the open source software, anything from Apache Hadoop to Python libraries, can give you powerful analytics capabilities for free. And now that's at a high level. Now, SESME, the Smart Manufacturing Institute that was set up as part of the Manufacturing USA Institute, or the initiative, has created something called their Smart Manufacturing Interoperability Platform, which is basically a set of free resources specifically for small and mid-sized manufacturers that help streamline connectivity. It helps streamline data ingestion, data contextualization, workflow orchestration, and interoperability. And they do this with something that they call their profiles, which you can kind of think of as information models for various machine types. And they have like 700 or more of these already. And they also have free classes out there. They have this 8-part virtual and on-demand architecture and technologies workshop that goes over how to use all these resources. I took it a couple months ago, and it's great. Now, in a lot of cases, for small, mid-sized companies, buying a pre-made unified platform for data integration and storage and analytics and visualization may make much more sense than building something ground up or custom with multiple vendors. And because working with a trusted platform partner can help you grow in a cost-effective way, and it's also a little less risky. And there's several good options out there. A few of the platforms or software companies that I really like out there is I like Site Machine, which offers a cloud-based platform designed for real-time production, data analysis. You have Tulip, which offers a platform that lets you create no-code applications to digitize your processes. They're also changing the way companies think about MES. You have Litmus, which focuses more on the data ops side with connectivity, and they have a data hub for data normalization, contextualization, along with real-time analytics. You have Inductive Automation, which provides a platform for integrating SCADA, HMI, MES, and IoT capabilities into a modular platform that's highly customizable. Now, they focus more on the control aspect and real-time visualization, but there's many more of these out there that are great, and some of them overlap a little bit, but they definitely can work together.
So many great questions this time. Okay, Crudy Leyenbauer asks, of all the data created and collected by manufacturers, really, how much is actually useful?
Great question, Crudy. And also not an easy one to answer. So I'll give it a try, though. So MIT, along with Microsoft, created a report this year in 2024 around AI in manufacturing. And one of the findings I found the most interesting was how higher revenue companies are actually less likely to find data suitable for AI. Of the smallest bucket of companies that this survey tracked, so those with annual revenues of about 100 million to 499 million, 21% said all of their data was suitable, and 19% said most of it was suitable. None of the other groups that were larger actually were anywhere close to this. The next highest for all of the data was super large companies, 10 billion plus, and they only put 8% of the data. So that just shows you of all the data that companies have, that's how much that they're self-claiming as it goes, this is ready to be used for advanced technologies like AI.
Okay, one final question in our great sequel. Sajeev Kote asks, what kind of data is easy to use and takes less effort and cost?
Well, it depends on a lot of things. Data that is easy to extract is different than data that's easier to manipulate or analyze. But overall, I would say that time series data, because it fits perfectly with how manufacturers, how the processes run, and it's continuous and sequential, and it's easy to access because it's typically collected and stored in a structured chronological order, making it straightforward to retrieve and analyze specific time periods. Now, many tools and databases are designed to handle time series data efficiently, allowing for quick access and visualization of trends, patterns, and real-time monitoring without much hassle. And so it makes it simple to track and to analyze trends. You can spot patterns, you can detect issues over time. And this data format's really great for things like predictive maintenance and optimizing processes, since it shows exactly how equipment and systems are performing at different times.
Another great program, Jeff. Very detailed and on-point questions for our second episode and for our expert, Jeff Winter. I learned a lot today. Thanks, Jeff. That's all the time we'd set aside for today's episode. Once again, I'm Scott Achelpohl of Smart Industry.
And I'm Jeff Winter, and this has been Revolutionizing Manufacturing.
And just one more reminder that our social channels are open for questions we can answer during our August episode. And just a reminder that they also can be sent to Jeff and Scott at smartindustry.com. Everyone have a pleasant day. So long from Smart Industry, and we'll chat again next month.